In this example, we're going to learn to create benchmarks for plotting decimals. So you may have noticed in the last video, those tick marks were really close together. They were already there for us because I had the computer print them out. But you could probably imagine that if you actually had to plot that point and draw those tick marks, it could be a little bit tedious. So what we're going to do, and what you'll do in practice a lot, is you'll need to plot decimals, and you're going to really approximate them, kind of like we did with the thousands place with the blue squares when we put it in the big grid. We want it to be approximately correct based on some benchmarks, which we're going to talk about in just a second, but we're not going to actually break it into 10 equal pieces because that could be pretty tedious. So let's read the directions. The number line below is partitioned into fourths or quarters. Use the given tick marks to approximate all of the decimals to the tens place between -1 and 1 on the number line. Label the points underneath the number line. Okay, so here's 0 and here's 1. And notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4 equal segments or quarters or fourths like they talked about. And I specifically use the word quarters because I wanted you to think of money. So if you have 1 quarter, that's 25 cents. So I'm going to put 0.25 here. 2 quarters or half a dollar is 50 cents. 3 quarters is 75 cents. So now I'm going to write them in the negative direction. So this would be negative 0.25, negative 25 hundredths, negative 0.50, negative 50 cents, negative 0.75. Okay. So we're going to use these as our benchmarks, and we're going to label everything between -1 and 1. Okay. So I'm going to start from 0 to 1. So notice a couple things between 0 and 2.5. So our goal is to get 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, running out of room, 8/10, and 9/10. We want to plot all of these using these as benchmarks. Okay. So notice that 0.1 and 0.2 have to be in here because they're less than 0.25. These are 1 orange strip, 2 orange strips. This is 2 orange strips and 5 yellow. Okay, so these are going to go in here. 0.3 and 0.4 will be between these two values because this is 30 hundredths, 40 hundredths will be between those. 0.5 lies here exactly. 0.6 and 0.7 are going to lie between 0.50 and 0.75. Okay, because this is 5 orange, this is 7 orange and 5 yellow. This is 6 orange and 7 orange. That lies between. And finally, 0.8 and 0.9 are going to be in this interval. Okay, so we're not going to, again, we're approximating. We're not going to do this perfectly, but we're going to make sure it's relative to these benchmarks. So I would not put 0.1 up here. That would be inappropriate because it's definitely less than 0.25. So I'm going to start with 0.2. Okay, and usually I like to label below, but we have a lot of stuff below, so I'm going to put this up here. Okay, and I'm going to put 0.1 right here. Okay, and notice kind of my goal was to make 0.2 is a little bit closer to 0.25 than it is to 0.1. So the idea behind that, this is 5 yellow squares more, this is a whole orange away from each other. But basically, as long as they're in here and they're in the correct order, you've gotten a pretty good approximation. So now 3/10 would be a little bit bigger. Okay. Here's 5/10, and 4/10 would be in between these two. Now again, if you only needed to plot 4/10, just make sure it's a little bit more than halfway between these two. Now we have 6/10 and 7/10. Well, 7/10 will be pretty close to 0.75. 6/10 is in the middle of the two. And 8/10 and 9/10 lie in here. 8/10 will be a little bit closer to 0.75 than 0.9. Okay. So that's basically the idea. And notice, again, not perfect, but we didn't have to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tick marks. Oops, I didn't plot my points here. Okay, so if you just needed to plot 0.8, you could use these benchmarks, just breaking it into quarters to get a good approximation. And we're going to do that in the next video from scratch without the quarters marked. Okay. Equivalently, if we wanted to do the negative values, you could just think about taking the opposites. Negative 0.1, let's do these in another color. Negative 0.1, negative 0.2, negative 0.3, negative 0.4, negative 0.5, sorry, this is a little bunched together, negative 0.6, negative 0.7, negative 0.8, and negative 0.9. Okay. So that's how we can use quarters as benchmarks for plotting decimals without having to write all 10 of the tick marks, or 9 tick marks to make 10 segments.